The alarm clock rang at 4:30 in the morning, as always. Marina opened her eyes even before the shrill sound filled the tiny room. Her body had already grown accustomed to that relentless routine, as if an internal clock alerted her that there was no time to lose. She switched off the device with a swift movement and sat on the edge of the narrow bed, rubbing her face with her hands. Fatigue weighed on her shoulders, but there was no room for weakness. There never had been. At 24, Marina carried a responsibility that many would take decades to comprehend. Ever since her father Joel passed away 3 years ago, the family's life had crumbled like a house of cards. Joel was a bricklayer, a man with calloused hands and a generous heart, known throughout the Brixton neighbourhood in London for his unwavering honesty. He never had much, but the little he earned was managed with dignity. When the unexpected happened, leaving only an immense void and accumulated bills, Marina had to grow up overnight. Her mother, Carmen, had always been a delicate woman, but after Joel's passing, her health drastically worsened. What began as profound sadness transformed into a serious medical condition that required constant monitoring, expensive medication, and at times hospitalizations. Marina took on everything alone. She worked in bakeries, diners, cleaned family homes, accepted any opportunity that paid enough to keep a roof over their heads and ensure her mother received the necessary care. She got up, walked to the shared bathroom of the small rented apartment, and washed her face with cold water. The mirror reflected a young woman with delicate features, deep brown eyes and dark hair tied back in a simple bun. There was no time for vanity. Marina put on the uniform she had ironed the night before, an impeccable white blouse and a modest black skirt, and left without a sound so as not to wake her mother. The streets of London were still dark when she caught the first bus of the day. The journey to Mayfair took almost 2 hours, crossing the sleeping city. Marina rested her head against the foggy window and let her thoughts wander. She thought of her father, of the stories he told about honesty and hard work, of how he never complained, even when he returned home covered in cement dust and with aching muscles. Joel always said that a man's dignity was not in what he possessed, but in what he built with his own hands. The Imperial Vista Hotel was an architectural gem hidden on one of Mayfair's most exclusive hills. Built in the early 20th century, the historic building had recently been restored and transformed into an ultra-luxurious retreat for magnates, international celebrities, and members of high society. Marina still remembered the day she received the call informing her that she had been selected to work as a waitress. The position came through an acquaintance of her mother's, and Marina seized the opportunity with both hands. The salary was better than anything she had ever received, and there was the possibility of generous tips. However, working at the Imperial Vista was intimidating. From the first day, Marina felt the weight of class difference. Guests moved through the corridors in clothes that cost more than she earned in an entire year. Conversations were in French, German, Spanish, languages she recognized but did not understand. The Italian marble floor gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and every detail of the hotel exuded an opulence that seemed otherworldly. Marina quickly learned to keep her head down, to smile politely, and to perform her tasks with silent perfection. Invisibility was the best strategy. The property belonged to a man named Vincent Thompson, a 70-year-old real estate magnate who was rarely seen. He lived reclusively on the upper floors of the hotel, managing his business through assistants and lawyers. The older staff members whispered stories about him. They said Vincent was ruthless in business, that he had built his empire without looking back, that he was cold as ice. They also said he never married, never had children, and lived alone in a world of empty luxury. Marina didn't care for gossip. She was there to work, earn her money, and go home. In the first few months, everything went as expected. She served breakfast in the gardens, attended to guests in the common areas, and occasionally organized trays for room service. She had never been up to the private floors. That area was the exclusive territory of the head housekeeper, Mrs. Irene, a 60-year-old woman with grey hair tied in a severe bun and an expression that tolerated no mistakes. It was on an autumn morning when the sky over London was covered by heavy clouds and the air had an unusual coolness that everything changed. Marina was preparing the breakfast tables when Mrs. Irene rushed into the kitchen. 2 employees had called in sick, and there was a huge list of tasks to be completed. The housekeeper looked around, her gaze settling on Marina. "You," Mrs. Irene ordered in her hoarse voice, "I need you to take Mr. Vincent's breakfast to his private office, now." Marina felt a chill down her spine. No one went up there. It was an unwritten rule, but known to all. Vincent Thompson's office was his sanctuary, a place where only he and a select few were allowed to enter. But she had no choice. Mrs. Irene did not accept hesitation. "Yes, ma'am," Marina replied, swallowing her anxiety. The tray was prepared with impeccable precision. Espresso, still warm French bread, imported red fruit jam, fine cheeses, and fresh fruit cut into artistic shapes. Marina held the tray carefully and followed Mrs. Irene's instructions, taking the service elevator to the top floor. The corridor was silent, lined with gold-toned wallpaper and lit by bronze sconces. Her steps were muffled by the Persian carpet that covered the floor. She stopped before the double-carved mahogany door. Her heart was beating faster than it should. Marina took a deep breath, balanced the tray in one hand, and knocked lightly on the door. Silence. She waited a few seconds, and hearing no response, turned the golden doorknob and pushed the door open slowly. The office was magnificent and oppressive at the same time. Dark wood bookshelves covered the walls, filled with leather-bound books. A huge Persian rug occupied the center of the room, and a solid rosewood desk dominated the space, surrounded by brown leather armchairs. The tall windows offered a panoramic view of the sea, but the heavy curtains were partially closed, leaving the room in dim light. The air smelled of old wood, cigars, and something indefinable that Marina identified as power. She entered slowly, looking for a suitable place to set the tray. It was then that her eyes were drawn to the wall behind the main desk. There, in absolute prominence, hung an oil portrait of impressive proportions. The frame was made of gilded wood, intricately carved with Baroque details, and the painting depicted a middle-aged man dressed in an impeccable beige linen suit. He was seated in an armchair, with an upright and confident posture, his gaze fixed on some distant point. But it wasn't the composition of the work that made Marina's heart stop. It was the face. The man in the painting had the exact face, absolutely identical to Joel, her father. Marina let out a muffled sound, something between a gasp and a moan of shock. The tray trembled in her hands. She took a step forward, then another, unable to tear her gaze away. Every detail was there. The strong line of the jaw, the straight nose, the thin lips, the deep brown eyes that seemed to see through people. And above the left eyebrow there it was, the small crescent-shaped birthmark. Joel had the same mark. Marina had kissed that mark 1,000 times when she was a child, playing at counting the stars on her father's face. But that made no sense at all. Joel was a bricklayer. He lived in a modest rented apartment, drove an old popular car that kept breaking down, wore simple clothes bought in neighborhood stores. He never mentioned having rich relatives, never spoke of a different previous life. How was it possible that a portrait of him, painted with the elegance of an aristocrat, was hanging in the office of London's most powerful man? Marina felt her legs weaken. She took another step, as if approaching the painting could reveal some difference, some detail that would explain that impossibility. But the more she looked, the surer she became. That was her father, or someone absolutely identical to him. The sound of shattering porcelain cut the silence like a scream. Marina looked down and saw the shards of the coffee cup scattered across the Persian rug, the dark stain of the liquid spreading rapidly. She had dropped the tray, without realizing, hypnotized by the impossible portrait. Before she could react, the office door burst open. Vincent Thompson entered, his presence immediately filling the room. He was tall, thin, with grey hair combed back, and a face marked by deep wrinkles that told stories of decades. He wore an impeccable dark grey suit, and his icy blue eyes turned first to the shards on the floor, then to Marina. "What do you think you're doing?" Vincent began to say, his voice laden with controlled irritation. But then he stopped. His eyes met Marina's and something changed in his expression. The fury dissolved, replaced by something Marina could not immediately identify. It was recognition, astonishment, perhaps even fear. Vincent took a step forward, studying the young woman's face with a disturbing intensity. His breathing became irregular. He looked at the painting, then back at Marina, and his already pale skin turned even whiter. Marina found her voice, although it came out trembling and low. "Why do you have a painting of my father?" The words echoed in the silent office. Vincent Thompson staggered slightly, as if he had been hit by an invisible punch to the stomach. He leaned on the edge of the rosewood desk, his fingers gripping the wood tightly. "He's not your father," Vincent whispered, and his voice was laden with a raw emotion that did not match the image of the cold man everyone knew. Tears began to form in his blue eyes. "He is my brother, my twin brother." Marina's world spun. Marina couldn't breathe properly. Vincent's words echoed in her mind like a funeral bell. Twin brother. Those two simple words shattered everything she thought she knew about her own history, about her father, about her family. She felt her legs give way and had to hold onto the edge of a leather armchair to keep from falling. Vincent Thompson, the ruthless magnate who commanded a billionaire empire, stood before her with tears streaming down his wrinkled face. He seemed to have aged 10 years in a matter of seconds. His always upright posture was now slumped, as if the weight of decades of secrets had finally become unbearable. "Sit down, please," he said, his voice hoarse, pointing to one of the armchairs. Marina obeyed mechanically, still in a state of shock. Vincent walked to a wooden bar in the corner of the room and poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to her and drank the other in a single gulp, as if it were something much stronger. The silence that followed was dense, laden with unasked questions and truths yet to be revealed. Marina held the glass with both hands, trying to process what was happening. Vincent returned behind the desk and sat heavily in his leather chair, like a tired king on his throne. "You look so much like him," Vincent said finally, his gaze fixed on Marina. "And like her too, your mother, Carmen, isn't it?" Marina felt a shiver run down her spine. "How do you know my mother?" Vincent sighed deeply, running his hands over his face. "I never met her personally, but I know who she is. Always have." "That makes no sense at all," Marina managed to say, her voice gaining strength. "My father never mentioned having a brother. Never. He was a bricklayer, worked on construction sites, lived in a simple apartment. He never spoke about having family beyond us." "It's because he didn't want you to know," Vincent replied, and there was genuine pain in his voice. "Because telling that story would mean reliving the worst betrayal of his life. The betrayal I committed." Marina felt anger beginning to boil within her, mixed with confusion. "Betrayal? What betrayal? You need to explain now. I have a right to know." Vincent nodded, closing his eyes for a moment as if gathering strength to dive into a past he had tried to bury. When he opened his eyes again, there was a sad determination in them. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "But it's a long and painful story. And when I'm done, you'll understand why Joel chose silence." He stood up and walked to the painting standing beside it, looking at his brother's painted face. "We were born here on this property. Before it was a hotel, this was the Thompson family residence. My father, your grandfather Henry Thompson, owned one of London's largest construction companies. He built buildings, bridges, roads. He was a powerful man, feared and respected. And he was also an extremely traditional and rigid man." Marina listened in silence, each word painting a completely different picture of the childhood she had imagined for her father. "Joel and I were inseparable," Vincent continued, his voice laden with nostalgia. "Identical twins. People couldn't tell us apart. We played together, studied together, dreamed together. He was braver than me, more sincere, purer. I was the calculating one, who thought of the consequences. Our father always said I would be the businessman and Joel would be the engineer. Everything was planned for us to take over the company together." He paused, and Marina saw his hands tremble slightly. Then came our 20s. Joel fell in love. Marina felt her heart tighten. He fell in love with my mother. Yes, Vincent confirmed. Carmen was the daughter of a carpenter who worked on one of my father's construction sites. She was 18, beautiful, gentle, but came from a humble family. Joel met her when he went to visit a construction site. He came home that day completely transformed. I had never seen my brother like that. He was truly in love. And your father didn't accept it, Marina said, beginning to understand the tragedy that was to come. He didn't accept it one bit, Vincent confirmed, sitting down again. My father was a man obsessed with social status, with lineage, with keeping the Thompson name among the elite. When Joel confessed that he was dating a carpenter's daughter and intended to marry her, Henry exploded. There were shouts, threats, slamming doors. It was terrible. Marina felt tears beginning to form in her own eyes, imagining her young, passionate father facing that storm. My father gave an ultimatum, Vincent continued, his voice growing lower. He gathered us both in the office, in this very room where we are now. He said we had a choice to make. Either we followed the family rules, married girls from appropriate families, took over the businesses and maintained the fortune, or we chose our own paths and would be completely disinherited. Without a penny, without a name, without a family. And what happened? Marina asked, although she already knew the answer. Joel chose love, Vincent said simply. He looked at my father and said he preferred to be poor and free than rich and imprisoned. He said Carmen was worth more than all the properties in London combined. Our father turned red with rage, shouted that he was a disappointment, that he was throwing everything away for some girl. Marina felt anger burn in her chest. My mother wasn't just some girl. I know that now, Vincent said quickly. But back. Then I was 20 and I was terrified. Terrified of losing everything. Terrified of disappointing my father. Terrified of facing the world without the security of the family fortune. He stopped, and Marina saw new tears streaming down the man's face. And then came the moment that has haunted me for 50 years. Vincent stood up again, walking to the window, his back to Marina. Joel was about to leave home. He had only a backpack with a few clothes. Before crossing the door, he stopped and looked at me. He said nothing, but his eyes said everything. He was asking me to go with him, not necessarily to abandon everything, but to support him, to say that I was on his side, to show our father that brothers stick together no matter what happens. Vincent's voice broke. And I lowered my head. I looked away. I chose security, money, my father's approval. I let my brother leave alone that rainy night. The last thing I saw was him opening the front door and disappearing into the storm. My father said we should never mention Joel's name again, that he was lost to us, and I accepted. I simply accepted. Marina was crying openly now. She tried to imagine her father at 20, alone in the rain, having lost not only his fortune and family, but also the support of his twin brother, his other half. But the story doesn't end there, Vincent said, turning back to Marina. Because I am a coward, but I couldn't forget my brother. I monitored his life all these years. He walked to the desk and opened a lower drawer. From inside, he took out a polished wooden box. He placed it on the desk and opened it, revealing dozens of photographs. Marina stood up and approached, her legs still trembling. The photos were arranged chronologically. Marina saw her father young, wearing a simple suit, beside her mother in a modest white dress, in front of a small registry office. The wedding photo. She saw photos of Joel working on construction sites, sweaty and smiling. She saw photos of herself as a baby, being carried by her father. She saw her first day of school, her 10th birthday, her high school graduation. How did you get these photos? Marina whispered, running her fingers over the images. Private detectives, Vincent admitted, and there was shame in his voice. For years I hired people to follow Joel discreetly, take photos, keep me informed. I needed to know that he was well. It was the only way I had to still feel connected to him. Marina didn't know whether to feel solace or repulsion at that confession. It was an invasion of privacy, but it was also a demonstration that, in some twisted way, Vincent had never truly left his brother behind. Then Vincent said something that made Marina's blood run cold. "And there's more. Something you need to know, something that gnaws at me to this day." He picked up a thick folder and opened it on the desk. They were documents, contracts, spreadsheets. As my construction company grew, as I expanded my father's business and built my own empire, I hired teams of bricklayers from different contractors to do the work. One of those contractors was where Joel worked. Marina felt the air leave her lungs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your father, with his calloused hands, helped build several of the buildings and hotels that form my fortune," Vincent said, and his voice was laden with bitter irony. "The man who was disinherited for choosing love ended up building, brick by brick, the empire he had rejected. He raised my wealth without ever asking for anything in return, without ever even knowing he was working for me." Marina covered her mouth with her hands, sobbing. The injustice of it was devastating. Her father working under the scorching sun, carrying bags of cement, climbing scaffolding, all to literally build the fortune of the brother who had abandoned him. "I discovered this years later," Vincent continued, "when I cross-referenced the names of the workers with the projects, when I saw the name Joel. Thompson on the lists I knew, and I did nothing. I didn't look for him, didn't offer help, didn't try to reconnect him to the family. I followed my father's order, even after he was gone." "But there was one time," Vincent said, his voice becoming even lower, "a single time that I tried." He pulled another chair and sat down heavily, as if that particular memory was the hardest of all. "This was about 10 years ago. My father had already passed away. I was driving through a construction area, one of my properties, when I saw a team of bricklayers working, and then I saw him. Joel. He was dirty with cement, but I recognized him immediately. It was like looking in a mirror, only his version was more honest, purer." "What did you do?" Marina asked. Vincent looked at his own hands, as if they carried the guilt of decades. "I stopped the car on the other side of the wire fence that separated the street from the construction site. I sat there watching him work. Joel was mixing cement, his back bent with effort, but there was something in his posture that still emanated dignity. He wasn't just doing a job. He was building something with his own hands, and there was pride in it." Marina listened in absolute silence, barely able to breathe, imagining that moment of silent encounter between brothers separated by time and choices. "Then he saw me," Vincent continued, his voice choked. "Joel looked up and our eyes met across that fence. It was as if time had stopped. I was in my imported car, wearing a suit that cost his entire year's salary. He was covered in dust and sweat. But when our eyes met, I saw that he recognized me. Immediately. Not just recognized me, he saw all of me. He saw the empty man I had become." "And what did he do?" Marina asked, her voice barely a whisper. "He didn't come running. He didn't shout my name. He didn't ask for money or help or explanations," Vincent said, and there was admiration mixed with pain in his voice. "He simply nodded. A simple, almost imperceptible gesture. It was a nod of recognition, of peace, but also of farewell, as if to say that the life he had chosen was sufficient, that he didn't need anything I could offer. And then he went back to work. He simply went back to work as if I were just another car passing in the street." Marina felt immense pride in her father mixed with a profound sadness. That was Joel, a man who had chosen his principles above all else and never regretted it, even when life was hard, even when he could have asked his rich brother for help. "That moment destroyed me," Vincent confessed, wiping away the tears that continued to fall. "I realized that Joel had won. Not in business, not in material wealth, but in life. He had a family who loved him, a job that gave him purpose and an inner peace that I never managed to find. I had billions and was completely alone." Marina looked around the luxurious office, seeing it now with different eyes. It was not a symbol of success. It was a gilded cage. Vincent stood up and walked to the painting again. "I had this portrait painted a few years after that encounter. I used old photos I had of him. I put it here to remind me every day of what I lost, of the brother I abandoned, of The man I could have been if I'd had a tenth of his courage. Why did you never look for him again? Marina asked. Why never try to fix things? Because I didn't deserve his forgiveness, Vincent replied simply, and because I feared he would reject me, and I couldn't bear that rejection. It was easier to live with distant guilt than to face the truth head-on. So I continued my empty life, accumulating money that brought me no happiness, building an empire that had no one to inherit. He turned to Marina, and there was something different in his eyes now, a determination born of pain. But then you appeared here today, you, Joel's daughter, you who has his eyes and his dignity, and I see a chance that I thought I would never have. Marina shivered. A chance for what? A chance to mend, even partially, the mistake I made 50 years ago, Vincent said, returning to his chair. Marina, you need to know something important. I have no family. I never married. I never had children. I spent my life building a fortune that, when I'm gone, will have no one to receive it. All of this, he gestured around. This property, the buildings, the companies, the bank accounts, everything will go to no one. Marina felt where that conversation was going, and her heart began to beat faster. You are Joel's daughter, Vincent continued. You are the only family I have, even if we don't know each other. You carry the Thompson blood, you carry the dignity that your father always had, and I want, if you accept, to transfer everything to you. I want to make you my sole heir. Marina felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. She stood up, abruptly from the chair, taking a few steps back. No, this cannot be happening. You cannot simply appear in my life, tell this whole story and think you can fix 50 years of abandonment with money. Vincent did not seem surprised by her reaction. I am not trying to fix anything with money, Marina. I know I cannot change the past, but I can try to ensure that you have a better future, that your mother has the medical care that she needs, that you do not have to work double shifts to survive. How do you know about that? Marina asked, feeling invaded. Because I have been following your life too, Vincent admitted. After Joel passed, I started monitoring you and Carmen. I know about the debts, about her health problems, about your 3 jobs. I know how much you have struggled. Marina felt anger burning in her chest. So you knew we were struggling and did nothing? You just watched from afar, from your luxury castle, while I worked myself to death to pay the bills. Vincent lowered his head. Yes, and that makes me a terrible man. But I feared that if I appeared offering help, you would reject me. Just as I feared Joel's rejection. I am a coward, Marina, I always have been, but today, with you here, I can no longer be a coward. Marina was trembling, conflicting emotions tearing her apart. Part of her wanted to run out of that office, return to her simple but honest life, forget everything she had heard. Another part of her thought of her mother, of the expensive medicines she needed, of the medical appointments that had to be postponed for lack of money, of the nights Marina cried from exhaustion in the bathroom so that Carmen would not hear her. I need time, Marina said finally. This is too much. You just dismantled my entire life, the whole story I knew about my family. I cannot simply accept a fortune just because you feel guilty. I understand, Vincent said, and I respect your decision, but please think about this. This money was built in large part by your father's work. He literally laid the bricks that became my fortune. In a way, part of it is already his. It is already yours. It would not be accepting charity. It would be accepting what is rightfully yours. Marina shook her head, still processing everything. I need to go. I need to think. I need to talk to my mother. Carmen doesn't know any of this, Vincent asked. My father never told her anything about his family. She knows that he came from a family that rejected him, but not the details. He protected that secret as if he were protecting us from the poison of the past. He was right to protect you, Vincent said softly, but now you know the truth, and it is up to you to decide what to do with it. Marina walked towards the door, her legs still trembling. Before leaving, she turned one last time. One question. Did you really love your brother? Vincent looked at her with eyes red from crying. He was the best part of me, the half that I lost when I made the wrong choice, and I have spent every day of the last 50 years regretting it. Marina nodded and left the office, closing the door behind her. She descended the service elevator in a state of shock, walked through the luxurious hotel corridors like a ghost and exited through the back door. A few ants, cool autumn air hit her face, but she barely felt it. She walked to the bus stop and sat on the plastic bench, putting her head in her hands. During the entire journey back to Brixton, Marina looked out the window without really seeing anything. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, memories, and emotions. She thought of her father, the man who had carried that enormous secret throughout his life. She thought of how he never complained, never showed bitterness, never let family rejection turn him into a harsh person. Joel had chosen love and dignity and lived according to that choice until his last day. When Marina arrived at the apartment, it was already night. Carmen was sitting in the small living room, watching a television program. Seeing her daughter enter, she smiled, but the smile disappeared when she saw the expression on Marina's face. "My daughter, what happened?" Carmen asked, getting up with difficulty. Marina sat beside her mother on the worn sofa and took her hands. "Mum, I need to tell you something. Something I discovered today about Dad." Carmen turned pale. "About your father, what did you discover?" And then Marina told everything. The story of the twin brothers, the rich family, the ultimatum, Joel's choice, Vincent's abandonment, the hidden photographs, the silent encounter at the construction site, the portrait in the office. She told everything while Carmen listened in absolute silence, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. When Marina finished, Carmen was silent for a long time. Finally she spoke, her voice weak but firm. "I always knew there was something about your father, an old sadness that he carried. He never wanted to talk about it, and I respected his silence, but now everything makes sense. Mum, Vincent wants to leave me everything. His entire fortune. Says I'm the only heir," Marina said. "What do I do? How can I accept money from this man who abandoned my father?" Carmen squeezed her daughter's hands. "Joel always told me one thing, Marina. He said he wasn't proud to be poor. He was proud to be free, to have made his own choices, to have lived according to his values. Money is neither good nor bad. It is just a tool. What matters is the hand that holds that tool and what it does with it." Marina looked at her mother, seeing wisdom in those tired eyes. The days that followed were the hardest of Marina's life. She continued going to work at the Imperial Vista Hotel, but everything had changed. Every corridor she passed through, every luxurious piece of furniture, every rich guest she served now seemed laden with a different meaning. She knew that empire had been built, in part, by her father's calloused hands. She knew that Vincent Thompson was there, on the upper floors, carrying 50 years of regret. They did not meet again in those first days. Marina avoided the upper floors, and Vincent respected her space, but she knew he was waiting for an answer, waiting to know if Marina would accept the inheritance or if she would reject him, just as Joel had done decades ago. Marina spent sleepless nights, staring at the ceiling of the small room, listening to the sounds of the city that never slept outside the window. She thought of all the possibilities. If she accepted the fortune, her mother could have the best medical treatments in the country. They would no longer need to worry about overdue bills or food at the end of the month. Marina could go back to studying, perhaps pursue the college degree she had always dreamed of but could never afford. But there was an overwhelming weight to this idea. Accepting that money seemed like a betrayal of her father's memory. Joel had rejected that life, had chosen simplicity and dignity over wealth. He had built an honest life with his own hands. How could Marina simply accept what he had refused? Wouldn't she be saying that his choice was wrong, that he should have stayed with the rich family? On a rainy afternoon, Marina decided to seek someone who might help her find clarity. She took 2 buses to a distant neighborhood, where Stephen, an old colleague of her father, lived. Stephen had been a construction foreman for decades and was now retired, living in a simple but welcoming house with his wife. When Marina rang the doorbell, Stephen opened the door with a wide smile. "Marina, girl, what a pleasant surprise. Come in, come in." The house smelled of fresh coffee and homemade cake. Stephen's wife, Mrs. Lucy, insisted that Marina eat something before any conversation. They sat in the small living room, and Marina noticed that the walls were decorated with family photos and simple paintings, It was a home full of love, not luxury. "Mr. Stephen," Marina began after accepting a cup of coffee, "I came here because I need some advice about my father." Stephen immediately became serious. "Joel was the best man I knew, girl. What do you want to know?" Marina took a deep breath and decided to tell part of the story. She did not reveal all the details about Vincent and the fortune, but told him that she had discovered that her father came from a rich family and had rejected everything for love. She told him that she was now being offered a chance to receive what her father had refused. Stephen listened in silence, nodding slowly. When Marina finished, he was thoughtful for a long moment. "You know, Marina, your father never told me this whole story, but I always knew there was something about him. A special quality," Stephen said. "I worked with many men during my life. Some worked only for money, others out of obligation, others because they had no choice. But Joel worked differently. He built with love." Marina felt tears beginning to form. "He told me once," Stephen continued, "that every brick he laid was a prayer, that every wall he erected was a gift to the families who would live in those houses. He saw meaning in his work, you know. It wasn't just a job, it was purpose." "But he was poor," Marina said, her voice breaking. "He worked hard his whole life and never had anything." Stephen shook his head vigorously. "That's not true, girl. Your father had everything. He had your mother. He had you. He had friends who respected him. He had dignity. He had peace of mind. These things cannot be bought. And look, he wasn't proud to be poor, no one is. But he was proud to be free. Free to love whoever he wanted, free to live according to his values, free from commitments that would have imprisoned his soul." Marina wiped the tears that were streaming down her face. "But what if I accept what he rejected? Wouldn't it be like saying he was wrong?" Stephen took Marina's hand in his calloused ones. "Listen here, girl. Your father made his choice in his situation. You have to make your choice in your situation. The circumstances are different. Joel was choosing between love and money. You are choosing what to do with a gift that is being offered. They are completely different things." "But this money comes from the same place that humiliated him," Marina argued. "And it was built in part by his hands," Stephen countered. "You told me your father worked on that man's projects. So part of that money is Joel's sweat. It's his work transformed into bricks, into walls, into buildings. Wouldn't it be honoring his memory to use this money to do good, to help people, to take care of your mother, whom he loved more than anything?" Marina had not thought of it from that angle. Stephen continued, his voice growing firmer. "Money is neither good nor bad, Marina. It is just a tool. What defines whether something is good or bad is the intention of the user. If you use this money to isolate yourself from the world, to become proud and distant, to forget where you came from, then yes, it would be a betrayal of your father's memory. But if you use it to do good, to help people, to honor Joel's work, then it would not be betrayal, it would be continuation." Marina felt something changing inside her. Stephen's words were making sense in a way that she had not considered before. "Your father would not be against you having a better life, Marina," Stephen said softly. "He worked hard precisely so that you would have opportunities. What he would be against is you becoming the kind of person who values money above love, who judges others by their bank account, who forgets human dignity. But I have known you since you were little. You are Joel's daughter, you have his heart. And a heart like that is never lost, no matter how much money you have." Mrs. Lucy, who had listened to everything in silence, spoke for the first time. "And think of your mother, dear. Carmen suffered greatly after Joel passed. She deserves to have comfort in the years that remain to her, not for luxury, but for dignity, so that she can receive proper treatment, live without pain, without worries." Marina nodded, feeling a clarity beginning to emerge from the confusion. "You are right. I need to stop thinking of this as a choice between honoring my father or betraying him. I need to think about how I can use this to truly honor him." She stayed another hour with Stephen and Mrs. Lucy, talking about Joel, recalling stories, laughing and crying. When Marina finally said goodbye and returned home, she had an idea forming in her mind. An idea that seemed right, that seemed like something Joel would approve of. That night Marina did not sleep. She sat at the table in the small kitchen with a notebook in front of her, writing. She wrote a list of conditions, of proposals, of ideas. She wrote and rewrote until the words reflected exactly what she felt, what she wanted, what she believed would be just. When the sun began to rise, Marina held a document in her hands. It was not professional, it did not have legal language, but it was sincere and clear. She folded it carefully and put it in her bag. That day, before starting her shift at the hotel, Marina asked to speak with Vincent. His secretary seemed surprised but made the call. Minutes later, Marina was once again in that elevator, ascending to the office that had changed her life. Vincent was waiting for her, standing by the window. He seemed older than the last time, as if the weight had weighed on him. His eyes anxiously sought Marina's. "Marina," Vincent said, his voice full of expectation. Marina entered and closed the door behind her. She did not sit. She stood, holding her bag tightly. "I have made my decision." Vincent swallowed hard. "And what is it?" Marina took the folded paper from her bag and handed it to Vincent. He took it with trembling hands and began to read. His eyes widened as he scanned the words. Marina began to speak, her voice firm and clear. "I accept to be part of this family. I accept to recognize you as my uncle. I accept the inheritance, but not in the way you imagined. I will not simply receive the money and live a life of luxury. That would be a betrayal of what my father represented." Vincent looked up from the paper, listening intently. "The Imperial Vista Hotel will cease to be an exclusive hotel," Marina said, and there was determination in her voice. "It will become the headquarters of the Joel and Vincent Thompson Foundation, a cultural and professional training center. The gardens will be open to the public. There will be craft classes, vocational courses, a library, space for community events." Vincent looked at the paper again, his hands trembling. "Half of the liquid fortune will be allocated to a perpetual fund," Marina continued. "This fund will finance university scholarships for children of construction workers. It will finance housing improvements in disadvantaged communities. It will ensure that the work my father did throughout his life transforms into opportunities for other people like him." Tears began to stream down Vincent's face. Marina did not stop. Her voice remained firm, each word laden with purpose. "And there is one more thing. My father's portrait needs to leave this private office. It will go to the main lobby where everyone can see it. Beside it, you will place a portrait of yourself, the same size in the same frame. And beneath both paintings, there will be a plaque telling the real story. The story of the twin brothers, the choice my father made, the choice you made. Uncensored, unromanticized, the complete truth." Vincent let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He reread the paper, scanning each line Marina had written with such care during the night. When he finished, he held it against his chest and closed his eyes. "Why?" Vincent asked finally, his voice breaking. "Why are you doing this for me? After everything I have done, after how I abandoned your father, why do you give me this chance?" Marina felt her own tears begin to fall. "Because my father taught me about forgiveness. He never spoke about you, never showed bitterness, never let the past consume him. He lived in the present, loved in the present, built in the present. And I learned from him that carrying anger is like carrying stones on your back. It only makes you heavier, slower, more tired." Vincent opened his eyes, looking at Marina as if he were seeing her for the first time. "You have his wisdom, the same greatness of spirit." "I don't know about that," Marina said, wiping her tears. "But I know that if I simply rejected everything you are offering, I would be as rigid as your father was. I would be repeating the same mistake of not giving a second chance. And if I accepted everything unconditionally, I would be betraying my father's memory. So these are my conditions. It's take it or leave it." Vincent looked again at the paper in his hands. "Your conditions are perfect. They are more than I deserve to hope for. They are a way to turn my mistake into something good, to give meaning to a life that has been empty for so long." He walked to the desk and picked up the telephone. Marina watched him dial a number and wait. "Dr. Henry," Vincent said into the phone, "I need you to come to my office immediately. Bring the asset transfer documents we discussed, and also bring your best lawyer for foundations and non-profit organizations. We have a lot of work ahead of us. When he hung up, Vincent turned to Marina with a smile that she had never seen before. It was a light, genuine, almost youthful smile, as if decades of weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "This will take weeks to legally organize," Vincent said. "But we start today now. And Marina, I want you to know something. Your mother, Carmen, she will move here to the property. She will have the best doctors, the best care, everything she needs. And you too, if you want, or we can arrange a house for you. Wherever you prefer, you decide." Marina thought for a moment. "I think my mother would like to stay here. She always loved places with gardens, and it would be good for her to be close to medical care." "Then it's settled," Vincent said. "I'll make the arrangements today." In the weeks that followed, the Imperial Vista Hotel was transformed into a different kind of construction site, not of building, but of rebuilding purpose. Lawyers came and went with piles of documents. Architects presented plans on how to transform the luxurious spaces into classrooms, libraries, workshops. Carmen was brought to the property and settled into one of the former guest rooms, now adapted for her medical needs. Marina observed everything with a mixture of astonishment and fulfillment. She had gone from waitress to heiress, from invisible to decisive. But most importantly, she felt she was doing something Joel would approve of. She was taking the tool she was given and using it to build something good. One afternoon, as Marina supervised the installation of bookshelves in one of the new libraries, Vincent approached. He was dressed more casually than Marina had ever seen, in simple trousers and a linen shirt. "I need to show you something," Vincent said. "Come with me." He led her to the hotel basement, an area Marina had never visited. It was cool and smelled of old concrete. Vincent turned on the lights, revealing what appeared to be a personal archive. There were metal cabinets, stacked boxes, furniture covered with sheets. Vincent went to one of the cabinets and opened it, revealing piles of leather-bound notebooks. "These are my diaries," he said. "I started writing when I was 15. I wrote every day for 55 years. He picked up one of the notebooks and opened it to, say, marked page. "This entry is from the day Joel left home. I want you to read it." Marina took the notebook with trembling hands. The handwriting was youthful, but clear. She began to read. "Today I lost my brother, not to a trip, not to a silly argument that will pass. I lost him forever. Joel left home because he chose love over fortune. I stayed because I chose security over courage. He looked at me before leaving, gave me one last chance to go with him, to support him, to show that brothers stick together. And I lowered my head. I am a coward. Dad is satisfied. Mum is crying in her room. And I am here, surrounded by luxury, feeling poorer than ever. Joel was the brave one. I am just what's left." Marina felt tears falling onto the old paper. Vincent continued speaking, his voice soft. "There are 55 notebooks here. In each of them there is at least one entry about Joel, about my regret, about his life that I followed from afar, about you after you were born. This archive is my confession, my prison. And now, if you want, it's yours." Marina closed the notebook delicately and held it against her chest. "I don't need them. You should keep them. They are part of your story, your journey. But there is something that I would like to ask." Vincent nodded for her to continue. "When the foundation opens, I want you to donate some of these notebooks to be displayed, not all, but some, so that people who come here can understand that even powerful men carry regrets, that even the rich feel pain, that money doesn't solve everything." Vincent thought for a moment and then nodded. "All right, I'll choose some that can be useful for educating without overexposing." They walked back together from the basement, through the corridors that would soon be filled with students and families. Marina stopped before the wall where the brothers' portraits would hang. The area was already being prepared, with special lighting and space for the explanatory plaque. "Is my father's portrait ready?" Marina asked. "It is being cleaned and restored," Vincent replied. "Mine is being painted now, based on recent photos. I want it to be honest. I don't want to look younger or more important than I am. I want it to show a 70-year-old man who wasted decades before finally waking up." Marina touched the empty wall. "When they stand side by side, People will see two men physically identical but who made opposite choices, and they will see that in the end, both found redemption. One through a life lived with purpose, the other through finally doing the right thing. Vincent placed his hand on Marina's shoulder. I wouldn't have found that redemption without you. You are the gift Joel gave me, even after he left. Through you, he showed me the way back. They stood there in silence for a moment, uncle and niece, connected not only by blood but by purpose. Marina temporarily moved into the property in a room near her mother's. She woke up early every day, no longer to work exhaustive shifts, but to supervise the transformation of the hotel into a foundation. She interviewed teachers for the vocational courses, selected books for the library, planned the scholarship programs. Carmen improved daily. With access to the best doctors and treatments, her health stabilized in a way Marina hadn't seen in years. She spent afternoons in the gardens, sitting on a wooden bench, observing the preparations. Whenever someone asked if she was happy, Carmen replied the same thing. Joel would be proud, not of the money, but of what's being done with it. One afternoon, Marina was reviewing documents when she received an unexpected visit. It was Stephen, accompanied by Mrs. Lucy. They had come to see the property after Marina invited them. Marina gave them a full tour, showing every room that was being transformed, every space that would have a new purpose. When they reached the area where the portraits would be displayed, Stephen stopped and looked at the space in silence. Your father would have loved this, he said finally. Not the luxury, but the idea that his work, his hands, helped create something that will now help other people like him. It's poetry, Marina. Poetry of justice. Vincent, who had joined the group, extended his hand to Stephen. You must be Stephen. Marina told me a lot about you. Stephen shook Vincent's hand firmly, studying the face of the man before him. It was like looking at Joel, but a different version, marked by decades of regret instead of inner peace. You have his face, Stephen said simply, but now I see you're starting to have something more. You're starting to have the light in your eyes that your brother had. Vincent felt those words hit his heart. That light comes from Marina. She showed me a path I thought was closed forever. It's never too late to do what's right, Mrs. Lucy said with her gentle voice. Joel always said the past cannot be changed, but the future is a blank canvas. The following months were of intense but gratifying work. Marina found herself learning about administration, about foundation management, about how to transform ideals into practical reality. Vincent was always by her side, no longer as the distant magnate, but as a patient mentor and a dedicated uncle. He taught Marina about business, about how to protect the foundation financially, about how to ensure the legacy would last for generations. But the deepest transformation was happening in Vincent. The cold and reclusive man everyone knew was disappearing, replaced by someone more human, more accessible. He began to emerge from his isolation, to talk with the workers who were transforming the hotel, to listen to life stories, to take an interest in the people around him. One morning, Marina found Vincent sitting in the garden with Carmen. They were conversing animatedly, laughing about something. Marina stopped and observed the scene, feeling her heart warm. Her mother, who had spent years as the wife of a bricklayer rejected by his family, now conversed amicably with the man who had caused that rejection. But there was no resentment. There was forgiveness. There was healing. Marina approached and sat beside them. What are you talking about? Carmen smiled. Your uncle was telling me stories from when he and your father were children. They used to build sandcastles on Mayfair Beach. Vincent nodded, his eyes distant with the memory. Joel always built more elaborate castles than mine. He had a natural talent for imagining structures, for understanding how things fit together. I should have realized back then that he was born to build, not to manage offices. He found his way, Carmen said softly, and he was happy in it. Very happy. I know that now, Vincent replied, and that brings me peace. To know that my brother lived a life that was worth it, even without the family money. Finally came the day of the official inauguration of the Joel and Vincent Thompson Foundation. The property was transformed. The areas that were once restricted to millionaires were now open to the public. The gardens were full of families exploring, children running among the ancient trees, young people sitting on the benches reading books from the new library. The rooms that once hosted exclusive guests were now classrooms where courses in carpentry, electricity, plumbing, and other trades were offered free of charge. The former gourmet restaurant had become a community cafeteria that served subsidized meals. The luxurious spa was now a medical clinic that served the community, but the central point of the inauguration was the portrait unveiling ceremony. A crowd gathered in the main lobby, where a velvet curtain covered the wall. Representatives of the press were present. Camera flashes illuminated the room, but Marina was no longer intimidated by the attention. Vincent stepped onto a small improvised platform and took the microphone. His voice trembled a little at first, but gained firmness. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vincent Thompson, and this property has belonged to my family for 3 generations. For decades, this place was a symbol of exclusivity, of privilege, of separation between social classes. Today, it transforms into something completely different, a symbol of unity, of opportunity, of redemption." The crowd listened in respectful silence. Vincent continued, "But before revealing what this foundation represents, I need to tell a story, the story of 2 twin brothers who were born in this place, a story of love, of choices, of regret, and of forgiveness." For the next 20 minutes, Vincent told everything. He spared no details, did not protect himself. He told about his father's cruel ultimatum, about Joel's courageous choice, about his own cowardice, about the 50 years of regret. He told about how Joel had worked building the buildings that formed the empire he had rejected. He told about the silent reunion across the wire fence. He told about Marina, the daughter who appeared like an angel to offer redemption. When he finished, there was not a dry eye in the crowd. Vincent gestured to Marina, who stepped onto the platform beside him. Together they held the ropes that held the velvet curtain. "This foundation exists because 2 people made different choices," Vincent said. "My brother chose love. I chose fear. But today, through Marina, these 2 choices meet and create something greater than any one of them alone. Today we honor not only Joel's memory, but also the possibility that it is never too late to do what is right." They pulled the ropes simultaneously, and the curtain fell, revealing the 2 portraits side by side. Joel on the left, with his linen suit and dignified gaze. Vincent on the right, in a similar pose but with a softer, more human expression. Between the portraits, a bronze plaque told the complete story of the brothers, uncensored, unromanticized. The crowd applauded, many crying openly. Marina looked at the portraits, at the identical faces of her father and her uncle, and felt that she had finally closed a circle that had been open for half a century. Carmen approached the platform, walking slowly, but with dignity. Marina stepped down to help her up. When Carmen stood beside the portraits, she placed her hand on Joel's, closed her eyes, and whispered something that only Marina and Vincent could hear. "You won, my love, not with money, but with love. And now that love multiplies." In the following weeks, the foundation began its full operations. The first vocational courses started. The library was open to the public. The first scholarships were granted to 3 young people, sons of bricklayers, who dreamed of becoming engineers. Marina officially assumed the role of executive director of the foundation, working side by side with Vincent, who became chairman of the board. They developed a routine of morning meetings where they discussed the challenges and successes of the previous day, planned the future, dreamed of expansions. One morning, while having coffee in the garden, Vincent handed Marina a document. "It's my updated will," he said. "Everything that wasn't transferred to the foundation goes to you when I'm gone. It's not as much as it was before, but it's still substantial. I want you to use it to live comfortably so you never have to worry about money again." Marina took the document but did not open it. "You know I would do all this even without any inheritance, right?" Vincent smiled. "I know. And that's exactly why you deserve it." They stood in silence for a moment, observing the first students arrive for the day's classes. Young people with bright eyes of hope, carrying backpacks and dreams. "Marina," Vincent said softly, I need to thank you. You gave me back something that I thought I had lost forever." "What?" Marina asked. "A family," Vincent replied, tears shining in his eyes, "and with it, a purpose. For 70 years I built an empty empire. Now, in the last months of my life, I am finally building something that matters." "You still have many years ahead," Marina said, squeezing her uncle's hand. "I hope so," Vincent said, "because I want to see this foundation grow. I want to see how many lives will be transformed. I want to honor my brother in the only way that I still can, by doing what he would do if he were in my place." 6 months after the inauguration, the Joel and Vincent Thompson Foundation had already impacted hundreds of lives. Stories of transformation arrived daily. A young man named Raphael, son of a bricklayer who had worked with Joel, received a full scholarship to study civil engineering. Mrs. Mariana, a single mother of 3 children, completed an electrician's course and secured a well-paying job. Mr. Anthony, a 60-year-old carpenter, learned new techniques that revitalized his business. Each story was a victory. Each transformed life was a way to honor Joel's memory. Marina kept an archive of all the thank you letters they received, and, on nights when she felt tired or doubtful, she reread them, remembering the reason for all that work. One special afternoon, Marina organized a meeting of all the foundation's first beneficiaries. She wanted to create a community, not just distribute scholarships and courses. She wanted those people to get to know each other, share experiences, support each other. Vincent attended the meeting, sitting discreetly at the back of the room while Marina facilitated the presentations. He heard story after story of struggle, of overcoming, of dreams realized, and in every face present he saw the face of his brother. He saw Joel's legacy multiplying, spreading, touching lives that he never knew. At the end of the meeting, one of the young scholarship recipients raised his hand and asked if he could say something. Marina nodded affirmatively. The young man stood up, clearly nervous but determined. "My name is Lucas," he said. "My father is a bricklayer, just as my grandfather was. I grew up seeing my father leave home at 5 in the morning and return at 8 at night, exhausted, but always saying that he was building a better future for me. When I received the scholarship from this foundation to study architecture," he cried, "he said that all the bricks he laid for 30 years were worth it because now I would have a chance that he never had." Lucas paused, emotional. And then he told me that he knew the man who inspired this foundation, Joel Thompson. They worked together on a construction site 15 years ago. My father says that Mr. Joel was the best bricklayer he ever knew, not because he was the fastest or the strongest, but because he treated every brick as if he were building a cathedral. He said that a man honors his work when he does it with love. Marina felt tears streaming down her face. Vincent at the back of the room was openly crying. Lucas continued, "So I want to thank you not only for this opportunity, but for showing me that there is dignity in all professions, that a bricklayer can be as noble as a king, and that a man's true legacy is not measured by what he accumulates, but by what he builds in the hearts of people." The room exploded in applause. Marina stood up and hugged Lucas, whispering a thank you that came from the bottom of her soul. Vincent also stood up and walked to the front of the room. He hugged Lucas and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You are living proof that my brother won. He built an empire far greater than mine, an empire of dignity, of values, of inspiration. And that empire will never crumble." Night fell over London, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Marina and Vincent stood in the main lobby before the portraits of the twin brothers, now illuminated by soft lights that highlighted every detail. "I spent my life thinking that I was the brother who won," Vincent said, his voice low but clear, "because I accumulated all this. Buildings, money, power. But today I see with crystal clarity that Joel was the one who lived true wealth, love, family, purpose, dignity. And the cruel and beautiful irony is that I needed to lose everything that I thought defined me to finally find what truly matters." He turned to Marina, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Thank you for letting me be part of this, Marina, for giving me the chance to, even belatedly, be the kind of man that my brother always was." for allowing me to be part of a real family, even if it's only in the last chapters of my life." Marina hugged her uncle, and they stood like that for a long moment, before the portraits, 3 generations of the Thompson family symbolically reunited. Joel through his image and legacy, Vincent through his redemption, Marina through her wisdom and compassion. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Marina, Vincent and Joel has deeply touched your hearts. This narrative about choices, regret, and the true definition of wealth reminds us that it is never too late to do what is right, that forgiveness can heal decades-old wounds, and that the most valuable legacy we can leave is not in bank accounts, but in the hearts we touch and the lives we transform. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue this emotional journey with us. We have prepared equally engaging and inspiring stories that explore the complexity of human life, family relationships, and the moral dilemmas that we all face. Click the subscribe button, activate the notification bell, and leave a like if you believe, as Joel believed, that true prosperity lies in love and the values we carry. Every day we bring unique narratives that make us reflect on what truly matters. Share this story with someone who needs to hear about forgiveness, about second chances, about how to transform regrets into positive actions. And don't forget to tell us in the comments which part of the story moved you the most, whether it was Joel's courage, Vincent's redemption, or Marina's wisdom. Your words inspire us to continue creating content that warms the heart and elevates the spirit. Until the next story, and remember that just as Marina transformed an inheritance into purpose, each of us has the power to transform our circumstances into opportunities to do good. See you in the comments and in the next story.